The next one says to apply the quadratic formula. It looks like the previous problems where I have a quadratic equation set equal to 0, but try as you may, you're not going to get it to factor out. And so they have the quadratic formula to solve these, and on Alex it will tell you to use the quadratic formula. In real life or in a book, it might just give you the equation and tell you to solve it. I would try to solve by factoring first, but if factoring doesn't work, I can always use the quadratic formula. Even on the ones that factor, you can use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says if you have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. In other words, a quadratic equation where a is the coefficient of your x squared, b is the coefficient of your x, and c is your constant term, that x is going to equal negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so basically all we're going to do is plug in the a, b, and the c based on the values that we have in our quadratic equation. So a is going to be 2, b is going to be a negative 9, and c is going to be 5. So in my quadratic formula I have minus the b value, which is negative 9, plus or minus the square root of the b value, which is negative 9 squared, minus the number 4, times the a value, which is 2, times the c value, which is 5, all over 2 times the a value, which is 2. So I filled in my a, b's, and c's. Notice I do have a 4 and a 2 that's always going to be in my formula. And now I want to simplify. If I have minus a negative, that's going to make that a positive 9. Negative 9 squared. Negative 9 times negative 9 is 81. Negative 4 times 2 times 5. That's going to give me negative 8 times 5, so minus 40. 80 minus 40 gives me the square root of 41, then, simplifying everything under my square root. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. On Alex, they don't have a plus or minus button, so you have to put it in as 2 answers. Be careful, this is one big fraction. Hit the fraction button first. So 9 plus the square root of 41 over 4, and 9 minus the square root of 41 all over 4 are going to be your solutions. So number 8, if I'm going to use my quadratic formula there, a is 9, b is negative 5, c is negative 1. So minus the b value plus or minus the square root of the b value squared minus 4 times the a value times the c value all over 2 times the a value, and then I'm going to simplify. So again, I have minus a negative 5, which is a positive 5. On my square root, a negative 5 squared is 25. Negative 4 times 9 times negative 1 would be positive 36. So adding those together, I get 61. And then 2 times 9 is 18. So 5 plus the square root of 61 over 18, and 5 minus the square root of 61 over 18. Going to be the 2 solutions that you have to type in. What I do is use my word shortcut, so I type in the first one, and then I highlight it, Control-C copies, Control-V pastes, and then I just change the middle sign from a plus to a minus. So 5 plus or minus the square root of 61 over 18. Number 9 then, if I'm going to use my quadratic formula, a is going to be 3, b is going to be 3, and c is going to be minus 7. So I'm going to have minus the b value plus or minus the square root of the b value squared minus 4 times the a value times the c value over 2 times the a value, putting my numbers in for my a, b, and c. So in this case, I'm going to have minus 3, plus or minus. 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 3 times negative 7. 4 times 3 times 7 is 84, and it's going to be negative, positive. Negative times a negative. I was going to say that's in the wrong section if it's a negative, but we have a negative times a negative. So we get a positive 84 plus our 9, so we're going to have 93 over 6. So we have negative 3 plus the square root of 93 over 6, and negative 3 minus the square root of 93 over 6. Be careful on this one that you do get the negative on the top of the fraction. So again, hit the fraction button first and then type it in. We didn't have any that we could simplify, but sometimes you'll get the square root of 18, say, that you can factor and then you can simplify it further. The only way you can reduce it down is if all 3 terms are divisible by the same thing. And so if I would have been able to factor out a 6 or a 3 there, I could have reduced, but since I can't factor it out any farther, that's just going to be my answer.